welcome everyone here to Krab Jab Studio for Tim Bruckner's show called Well Played. Although the majority of the work in here is new, and most of it, for the most part, has not been seen by the greater public. Many of it is one of a kind. But Tim has had a 40-plus year career in both. Well, you don't have to tell people.
I'm old.
Yeah. In the arts, primarily working in the toy industry, sculpting for
DC, Marvel, Sideshow, Hallmark, Danbury Mint, blah, blah, blah.
And so you get an idea of how much work he's done over the years. And back in the earlier days, until recently, a lot of artists that worked in those industries were never credited for the work they did. So he was basically your classic unknown artist on a roster of artists putting this stuff out.
I didn't get a sculpture credit until 1999, and I'd already been working since 1968.
Yeah, so that gives you an idea of how tireless and sometimes often thankless the work happens to be. So he actually worked for that period of time. He just retired, or semi-retired about 6 months ago, and which has given him the opportunity to do a lot of his own creations and vision.
I've been sculpting since I was 18. Had my first professional gig as a wax carver at a Beverly Hills jewelry store. The guy was a big game hunter, so I sculpted an assload of animal stuff. One of the high points was an elephant head belt buckle with the tusks, which created certain logistical problems for the man who wore it and the woman he used to hang with. And then I went freelance, and I did, you know, in those days you had a portfolio and you went from art director to art director, and you know, would get questions like, well, have you sculpted a one-legged cat? Did today, done already. Because you did every job was something that you thought you could do, even if you never did it. And that's how you got one job after another job after another job. So I spent a lot of years freelancing. It's commercial work, you get some kind of graphic reference. You do a clay rough, so you work out all the proportions, you work out the attitude, you work all the relevant stuff, the big picture stuff. If your art director signs off, you make a waste mold, which is a more of a temporary mold. You'll pour a wax into that. That gives you the ability to finish each section as you need to. As opposed to if you work in sculpting, you're committed to the entire piece at one time. And at the end, when you've baked it and you realize you'd rather have the arm doing something else, you're screwed. Which is effort and time and money, and you're not likely to make that change. If you're working in wax, it's just a matter of an X-Acto and a bump up and a little extra, you know, fill work. So once the master wax is finished, you make a master mold, you cast a set of master resins, you clean, finish them. I paint all my own paint masters, which doesn't mean that I'm on somebody else's schedule, and you present it. And then they send it to China, and then they make a gazillion, and that's it.
You have one bronze piece. Would you do more bronzes, or are you strictly sticking to more garage?
I've done a couple of bronzes. The thing about, I worked at a foundry a little while, so that gave me an edge on how it works. But it's a collaborative effort. And unless you're collaborating with a foundry which is really, really good, you don't know what the hell's going to come out. I mean, I worked at a foundry, and the chasers, the guys that, once the piece is cast, they cut off all the gates and they retool everything and they put it together. Unless you've got a guy or a woman who's really in tune with what you want to do, you're at their mercy. And that is not cheap. I Am the Walrus piece was the most ambitious piece I've ever done. That took like 3 months. Half of it was just to figure out how to get it here. But it was just how to deal with the engineering complications of what it is. You know, it's you know, it could be a couple of weeks, could be, you know, a month, it could be you know, a week. It really depends on what it is, how attuned I am to what has to happen, how often I don't have to change my mind. It's anybody's guess, but it's the process, as we might have agreed. It's just a lot of steps, and until you make the master molds, you can change your mind all the way along that, which I really like.
can you talk about living with sculpture? I know that's a huge thing
Oh,
for you.
thank you for this.
Yes.
Anybody who owns sculpture, if you own sculpture, you have put it someplace, and it stays in that place. Do you and the sculpture a favor and move it to someplace else. If you've got it on the mantle in the living room, take it out of the mantle, off the mantle in the living room, and put it in the bathroom, or put it on a shelf in the dining room, or anything, because light is the thing that determines the character of the sculpture past what it is.
There is nothing like a dream to create the future.